All right, we're good.
Growing up, what sports did you play?
Played them all, and whatever sport was in season was my favorite. But baseball was my first love. But as I got a little bit older, as I mentioned, whatever sport was in season, that was my favorite. And I felt in my era that it was important to play different sports. I know things have changed a little bit over the years, but again, going back to my era, playing all the sports we thought was the way to go.
How do you think that impacted you in your development as a professional athlete?
Well, I just felt like being fresh was important, and not getting burned out. And again, that's just kind of the era that I grew up in, and I realize that things have changed, a lot more specialized in all the sports now. But you're asking me how we did it, and that's what we did. So we played multiple sports, and I just felt like, just for example, basketball in particular was for a middle infielder. I think, the head on the swivel and being attentive and seeing different things. Obviously, in a basketball court, you can't have tunnel vision. You need to be able to see, both ways, things like that. So I thought basketball for me was very important.
When you look back on all your youth sports experiences, were they positive? Were the parents supportive? Were the coaches supportive? What do you think back when you look back on
Oh, very supportive. And I know that there was always there's a small percent, and I don't think, in any generation that it hasn't changed. I mean, some a little overjealous that, they're maybe too much, but they mean well. But for the most part, parents were very supportive. I had some, as far as the coaching back in the day, some very good, solid coaching that I'm very appreciative of today.
What was it about baseball that you fell in love with?
Well, I think first, just as a young boy, any ball that my mom and dad used to tell me that, I just took to. So it was just something, I guess, it was embedded in me, and just, very fortunate that I was blessed with that. But my mom was really a big baseball fan, and she was a big Stan Musial fan. And, she used to always say, if you ever get to that level, be humble, be humble. And I just remember that as a young boy growing up. But the fact is that, for whatever reason, I think back in the day, again, baseball was obviously the number one sport. Things have changed a little bit. It's arguably which is the number one sport. But back, growing up in my era, baseball certainly was number one.
What was it like to play for Sparky, and what did you learn from him? Maybe not just as a professional athlete, but being a person too, a good person.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that about Sparky. We could do a whole show and talk for hours about my mentor, and not only mine, but a lot of the guys that played with the Tigers. And really, when I say that, a lot of guys that played for the Cincinnati Reds, and he's probably most known for the Big Red Machine. And he managed the Cincinnati for 9, but he managed for Detroit 17, so actually he was there a lot longer. But I'm so appreciative the fact that not only did he teach us how to play baseball the right way, but he also taught us, how to be a professional off the field, and how do you conduct yourself. And that goes hand in hand in being a professional athlete, at least how we feel, and that's how he felt. So again, I'm very appreciative that our lives crossed paths, and that I was taught by, I'm a little biased at the best, but certainly one of the best.
What was it like to play with Lou Whitaker for so many seasons, and what made you guys so magical together?
Well, I think that, Lou's talent, and he's not talked about as one of the better second basemen in baseball, and that's a shame, because I know that he was somewhat quiet. I mean, he had a loud stick. He did his talking with his bat, his glove, but he was a pretty darn good player. And, the fact that we both came up at a young age, we had things in common, but he was a very talented young man. And just the fact that, you look back, and I think we tend to appreciate things more as we get older. We were just doing our jobs when we were playing as kids. But now you think back and say, my God, we played 19 years together at the Major League level. That's incredible. You never say never, but highly unlikely that two guys are going to be that age and be able to play that long together.
What was it like to win a World Series and to be such a huge part of the team's success?
Well, just to be a contributor was all I ever wanted to be. And we had such a special group that year that everything came together. And we thought we would win more than one, but unfortunately we didn't. But at least we did, and what a magical year, starting off 35-5, and winning 17 games in a row on the road, which is an American League record. And it was just one of those dream years that whatever we did, whatever lineup Sparky put out that year, it worked. And again, just a dream year, and by far the best year for me that I've been a part of.
When you look back on your career, what are you most proud of?
Well, I think that the first thing that comes to mind is playing with the Detroit Tigers my whole career. You know, you look on the back of my baseball card, even though you got to blow a little dust off, it's been a while. But the fact is that you'll see in with Lou Whitaker that you'll see the Detroit Tigers. And you don't see that too often. And unfortunately, sometimes it's out of the player's hands. But for us, it worked out. But just to be able to look back to say that you played with one team your whole career is very special.
You know, being such a good person and a good sportsman, why is those qualities so important to you?
Well, I mean, that's I appreciate that. Obviously, to play as long as I did, there's got to be a little fire, and I got upset. But I did it in a way that I did it behind the scenes, so to speak. But you know what? When I didn't perform well, I was upset. But you know, in a way that I was taught well from my little league days all the way up, that there's a way to conduct yourself. And then obviously getting into the major leagues with Sparky, there was he taught us again basically the same thing, just. You know, again, I think it starts with my family. You know, I have a good upbringing, and just from there, I just ran into the right people at the right time that helped me and teach me the right way.
How can coaches today instill those same qualities in young kids growing up?
Well, I think you have to be, first of all, you have to be caring, and I'm not saying they're not, but I think you have to look at each young person, whether it be a male or a female, and you might say the same thing, but you might have to say it differently, because the 7 out of 10, you might be able to say the same thing, but the other few kids, you might have to say it a little bit differently, and that's, to me, is coaching. And but you might be saying basically the same message, but you're saying it with a little different twist. And again, it's just people respond to things a little bit differently, comprehend things a little bit differently when they're said. So I think that's what good coaching is: looking at the individual or the young person and trying to help them, and being, I guess, repetitive. This game, baseball, obviously is a very repetitive game, and you've got to stay consistent day in and day out. You know, there's going to be good days and bad days, as we all know the cliche, but it's the truth. And you have to be caring, and I think that the young person, whether it be a young or old, I think they have to feel like you really do care about them. And if you do that, I think that's a real good start.
You're such a great team guy during your career. How do you teach kids teamwork so they're about the team?
Well, you know, that's a real good question, and you know, I struggle with that. It came somewhat natural, but when I say that, it started from when I was a young person. That I'll give you an example. When I signed professionally, the middle infielders really weren't offensive. Wasn't a very offensive position. It was. The scout told me if I hit 250 and play good defense, I'll play in the major leagues a long time. Well, you know, I'm thinking in my mind, I'm coming out of high school and had a very successful, high school career, and I'm thinking, boy, I think I could hit 250. Well, you find out when you get into professional baseball, it's very difficult to hit. But the fact is that, I wanted to play and I wanted to do better. But team is the individual, and the rewards will come when you win. And I really want to emphasize that obviously you've got to do something to stay in the lineup on a regular basis, but it's much more gratifying, instead of an individual accomplishment, to do it as a group. And I believe that, and again, that was instilled in me in an early age, and thank goodness that I was taught that way.
There's so much failure in this game. How do you help kids stay positive? There's so many lows and downs.
Yeah, well, we were talking a little bit about staying consistent, because especially in the game of baseball, we're always rewarded with the good. But in baseball, you can do everything right at the plate, and hit a line drive, and it's right at somebody, and it's an out. And oftentimes you feel like I didn't succeed, but that's not true. In baseball, if you put together good, solid at-bats and hit the ball hard, you're going to have hits. But then, fortunately, people on defense are there to catch the ball, and it just so happens that you're going to make some outs. You're going to do everything right, and you're going to make an out. So you have to, again, go back to the coaching part to say, hey, you did everything right. It's just, that's part of baseball. And again, just being consistent with that approach to say, guys, we've talked about this before. There it is. You did it well. Pat them on the back and move on.
Last question. If you're talking to a room full of volunteers going out to coach kids for the first time, what would be like the main points you'd want to get across to them?
Well, first of all, you want to teach them, as far as the coaching part, there's basics. I mean, different generations, obviously in this day and age, probably a little more flash than when I grew up, which is years ago, and that's okay. But there's certain fundamentals, certain bases that never will change. Stay with that, but then coach them to their what you see, and not everybody can be cloned like X, Y, or Z. That you have to take that individual and work with them and try to get the best out of them. But we're all unique, we're all different, so I think that's what coaching is a big part of too.
That's awesome. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Really appreciate it.
All right.